Thanks, Daniela, and welcome all to the last of the Organist webinar series. It's a much more relaxed and casual one today, but just a little bit about myself. I've been at One Spatial for about 5.5 years now, and only started using FME a little bit after, so about 4 years, and it's been most of my time, pretty much, or if not all, in the spatial industry, so pretty fresh and probably more junior than a lot of you here. I will be talking today about looking at music festivals and comparing figures from before and after COVID and finding some trends and interesting uh, results. And I'll be using the USA as a study area. I'll just quickly take you through the agenda. So I'll start by giving you some context and background as to what the presentation is about, some data collection processes and aims and predictions from what I think I'm going to find from the results, how I achieved this in FME, and then, of course, analyzing those results, which is pretty much all the maps and the graphs. Okay, so firstly, we'll just look at the context. A bit of context to what's going on. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, I know that it's widely known music festivals are a huge pillar for spatial data management and complex data standards. So I assume there's been some sort of big music takeover of One Spatial, and this is a bit of a promotion of that. Unfortunately, not that it's not happened, and this has no commercial relevance at all. It's just a personal hobby and curiosity of mine that I was able to use FME to sort of achieve. So it did a bit of a two birds with one stone, sort of cutting my skills with pre-sales. So I really just wanted to, it was just a statement that you've heard around that live music's suffering post-COVID for various type of reasons. This is an article from SBS in March 2024, going through the cancellation of Splendor in the Grass. And there's been a few other ones too, such as Field Day, Spilt Milk as well. Might be because the same 10 bands come every year. However, this is something we can test out overseas as well. So you can pretty much just kick back and relax, because I checked the registration list. No one here is from Insomniac or Big Day Out. So we can just look at some pretty maps and enjoy. I'll now take you through the data collection process and what some of the aims and predictions were for this presentation. So the data and collection process, we already established that there's been no big music takeover, so I don't have access to the data directly. So I'm going to have to go out manually and find the publications for the 50 music festivals and troll through all the financial records. Obviously, I'm not going to be doing that because I have a job to do and not enough time in the world. So I'm going to be using AI, specifically ChatGPT, to be collecting the data. So I'm interested in analyzing a few things. I want to know the revenue, attendance, the genre of the festival, and then the location, city and state, to carry out various types of analyses. So I'm just going to be using the top 50 festivals, mainly because ChatGPT warned if I use any more than that, the data is going to get really guessy. So just stuck to the top 50 and used the 3-year period from before and after COVID, mainly just because we've only got 3 years of post-COVID data. 2025 hasn't finished yet, and it's been a bit of a weather nightmare. So it's not probably fair to use. So we'll just stick to consistency and use 3 either side, even though that is quite a small sample space. So there's quite a number of reiterations to get the correct data structure when trying to prompt it. But once the structure was correct, I tried to just say, yep, and repeat this for these years to get some consistency. And hopefully it calls and pulls on the same data. So this was my recycling bin of all the iterations I had to do. And about half of that, again, was still in my downloads. So a lot of checking and a bit of a clumsy process, to be honest. This is 20 of the top 50 results from 2017. You can see it's got the festival name, then the location, which we'll have to split up into city and state using FME, the genre, and these are all estimates of the ticket price, the attendance, and then the revenue that each festival is generating. aim and disclaimers. What are we looking for, and what are some things I have to tell you first as a caveat? So the aim is to do a pre versus post COVID analysis, have a look at how the number of festivals are distributed across the country, as well as revenue, and find trends and totals, and find which has been, if there's basically been as a big of a hit post COVID as a lot of news articles are suggesting. Predictions I have is that post COVID is going to have more variability in its revenue totals across the 3 years, just naturally coming back, and a lot of volatility economically. Pre-COVID is going to have more total revenue, I think, based kind of on what I was just saying before. 2022, I think, will have the lowest year in revenue, being fresh, bouncing back from COVID, and people still recovering. And the populous states and cities will have the most attendance with the most revenue, with the most number of festivals. So it will essentially be a function. I'm suggesting that there's a function of population in terms of where they're located. So your Californias, your Floridas, Texas. I put in Illinois. You could probably add Nevada in there as well, because you've got Chicago and Las Vegas that are quite popular for music festivals. I'm looking also for change detection and trends in the data. So across the study periods, but then also within. So from 2017 to 2018, what some of the trends. And I want to do that for revenue growth, the number of festivals, group this by genre as well, add that there as an analysis, and then categorize the cities by population and see how they've performed against each other as well. Mainly because there's a lot of destination festivals and sort of abstract ones, so it'd be interesting to see how they perform. Okay, so disclaimers, there's a lot of them. It's AI collected data, so there's many caveats. All values are estimates. It's hard to retrieve these publications because, shocker, there's a monopoly of event organization in festivals everywhere. So the release of records at the end of the financial year don't have specific festivals. It's one company that will do a whole bunch of them, so it all just gets lost. So what you can really just do is saying, this is the attendance. We know it usually sells out. This is how much they charge for a ticket. There's your revenue, but that's not including catering, merch, accommodation. So if it's a camping festival, VIP tickets, and that's not minusing their costs as well. So it's completely, it's not a true representation. As I said, it assumes that the events are sold out. And with the cities, populations, the data set I used for cities across the US, if there's a population under 15,000, it didn't get mapped, which was 15 of the 55. Pretty impressive, but that's just a disclaimer, and meant that I couldn't. Spatializing the cities was just a bit, I didn't worry about it. Outputs, so the maps and the graphs I'm going to be taking you through today. So there's going to be a pre versus post COVID, pretty obvious, of revenue number of festivals, and then a change detection between the two. I'll then take you within pre and then within post-COVID and find how revenue and number of festivals change throughout the years. Then I'll also take you through those results grouped by genre for both pre and post-COVID, and also city size as well. So number of festivals, revenue, and number of hosting cities grouped by the city size for both pre and post-COVID as well. So you've got 22 outputs that's going to be in this presentation. So get ready, because here it comes. Before I do that, I'll quickly take you through the FME process to produce the results. The process in FME and some of the workarounds and disclaimers that I had. So the process was really a whole lot of joining, merging, aggregating, and creating attributes through a rhythmic expression. Then when I was aggregating, I had to correctly sum, concatenate, and average the right attributes for the specific output that I was doing. The outputs you'll see today are more or less aggregated according to either genre, city size, or state being the most common you'll see. And just the city size categorization I used is there as well. So over 200,000 being large, anything under 15,000 being small, and medium being in between that. The disclaimers and some of the workarounds that I did, as I mentioned before, I didn't spatialize the cities as about a third of the data wasn't there in the city data set. The genre values that came through, there was 34 of them, which had to be mapped into 9 standard options for this analysis. New York City had different names across the spatial data sets and the CSV files, so that had to be rectified. The postcoded data that I downloaded from ChatGPT that it gave to me didn't actually have any genre values that I missed, so I had to go back and merge those on separately. And the revenue states, when they do the comparison, I only did ones that had revenue for both analysis periods. So when I do number of festivals, it's easy just to put 0. But because I was doing percentage change for revenue, the values will just be they're too large or too small, and it'll throw out trying to visually represent those. So I avoided that. I'll give you a look under the hood for one of the workspaces because I probably should at some point during this presentation, but I'm a bit reluctant just because these big joining, aggregating, fiddly sort of tasks just get quite spaghetti monster when there's actually not that whole much cool stuff going on. It's quite basic things. So I'll just quickly take you through that. You can see on the file orange, there's 3 for, I think the top one's actually pre-COVID and then the bottom one's post-COVID. And there's the process of just creating some attributes and then joining them together to create one data set. The blue is aggregating by city, and then the pink is going to be aggregating by genre to do different analysis. The purple then does the city size analysis, and then the green genre is aggregating by genre and then brings it together at the end to be written out as a CSV, so I can do some of the bar graphs I'll show you. But there's also another workbench for change detection, and then also the spatialization of each year, as well as obviously both pre and post COVID. So they're very big workspaces for not a whole lot going on. I'll now take you through the cities and the city sizes, and then also the results grouped by genre as well. Number of festivals by genre. We can see here that rock, metal, and punk actually had the most by a total. I was quite surprised by that. And then also multi-genre and your dance music down the bottom, probably tying for third, tying for second, I should say, and then hip hop probably next. But then the rest are relatively even. Maybe R&B and soul not having as much as the rest. Now looking at revenue by genre. Despite having not as many festivals, multi-genre festivals have by far and away generated the most revenue, with about $500 million each period for pre and post COVID. The EDM and dance music and rock and metal actually tie for third, and then the rest are relatively low. But pop, I guess in pre-COVID, we had a really strong time, but not so much post-COVID. It'd be interesting to see what's going on there and the results. And attendance, the results are starting to take shape a little bit now. Multi-genre starting to have the most attendance, generating the most revenue. I guess that sort of makes sense when you're casting a net over many different types of artists. You're going to attract a bigger crowd, and then it all is a little bit of a much for much after that. Not too much of a trend, but I guess dance music and rock and metal holding strong as the next popular after that. And finally, by ticket price, is not actually too much of a jump between all of them. One thing I can see that stands out a bit is jazz, folk, and blues being, half the price for some of the others. I can think of that as being that a lot of the ones, multi-genre, especially the dance ones, I'm not so sure about rock and metal, but I've heard of a few ones that they're multi-day festivals that happen over 3 days, some of them over 2 weekends as well, whereas jazz and blues might only have a maximum of 2 days or just a single day, resulting in a cheaper price. But yeah, as I said, there's not too much variation. I guess some takeaways we can say from genre performance overall is that multi-genre is definitely the strongest performing, charges the most, makes the most money, and I'd say dance music and punk and metal has been a theme that they follow together as well. Now looking at city size. So for number of festivals for the different size of city, it's pretty clear that one thing major cities dominate, and on, kind of surprisingly, regional and small towns perform almost the same, but there's actually no change really from post to pre-COVID. So that same sort of structure has stayed consistent throughout. And looking at revenue, it starts to become a lot more linear with uh, keeping the logic that the bigger city is going to have more festivals or the bigger festivals that generate more revenue. And that's pretty well seen in the yeah, as I said, in the sort of descending nature of the graph, with pre and post COVID being quite a little bit different, but pretty consistent as well. And finally, looking at number of hosting cities by city size, it's actually pretty spread out, with small towns actually outperforming the regional cities. So you might get some festivals chasing that, scenic, open air, large space sort of vibe, which can be better facilitated by smaller towns that have a lot more of that, as opposed to major cities having, cityscapes and maybe a bit restrictive in what you can do there. But of course, the revenue is there, so it's definitely showing that you need the infrastructure and that sort of stuff to host the big ones that do generate a lot more money and host a lot more people. So I guess the takeaway we could kind of say is that the population size is not linked to the ability to host festivals, but it does attract the less prosperous ones. Looking now at the total maps, so for pre-COVID and post-COVID, grouped by state. Before I jump into the maps, though, I wanted to go through some of the cartographic logic that I use in the color scheming and categorization for the maps. The logic was for single year or single period maps where there's no comparison, I'll use yellow to red color ramp, with red being the high values and yellow being at 0. If it's a comparison where there's a chance for negative and positive values, I use a blue-red color ramp where red is less than 0 and blue scheme, so red to yellow, yellow being closer to 0. And then for greater than 0, it's a blue scheme with closer to 0 being green, and then further away getting more blue. But I actually used a brown gray for 0. That's something that's a bit dull and boring and stands out from the color scheme, and really get that increase or decrease communication going without having to look at values too much. And the breaks in color ramp were adjusted to remove the green. So this is how an example of that, where I pushed most of it up. Was just depending really on the data and where the 0 is, where that sort of moves, but making sure the yellow and the blue are quite close to each other, so it goes from yellow to blue quite quickly. And I wanted to avoid that green and not have a green-red colors sitting next to each other in the map. And if there's no data with the states, it's just a gray, and the number of classes across the maps varies with the different data that goes through it. Looking at the number of festivals. So we have pre-COVID on the left for just total number, and post-COVID on the right, sharing the same key, and a comparison between the two, which is just post-COVID minus pre-COVID. Just looking at those, some of the takeaways we can have is California, Florida, Texas, those type of states are the ones that are having the most festivals, despite California having such a loss from pre to post COVID. It still is one of the big performers. And we have Ohio and Virginia emerging, which are just these two states here. And then Texas is still performing quite well, and a good performing state from Nevada as well. Now looking at revenue, no surprises here. The ones that have had more music festivals there have also generated more revenue. However, when we look at comparing that, some of the takeaways that we can see is that Nevada's actually done quite well, but it's when you look at the comparison, the larger states are the ones that are suffering a lot post-COVID, and it's the smaller states, particularly out east, your Carolinas, Virginia, Ohio, that are actually performing much better on the other side of COVID. I'll now take you through the change detection maps within either periods and some of the trends that occurred as well. And we'll start off with number of festivals. Starting with pre-COVID, 2017 to 2018 had quite good growth in the western states and then regression in the eastern states, but then a lot of change across a lot of them. And what then happened in 2018 to 2019 was a complete reverse, which is pretty interesting. But overall, there's from 2017 to 2019, we can have some takeaways that there was growth and regression, but the larger states overall did grow, and it was just the smaller states that took a hit. But if we look at post-COVID, it's a bit of a different story, mainly because in 2024, there was no change from 2023. So when we look at our change detection map, it is the exact same as 22 versus 23. So the only real takeaway from this that we can see is that you've got your northern states that are doing quite well. Ohio is quite a random one, but the larger states in general have either changed or are not changed or suffered a lot. We'll now look at revenue and the percentage change across periods. Starting again with pre-COVID, it's a similar trend where what grew and got bigger in 2017 to 2018 fell off a cliff in 2019, and the trends reversed. But however, what I'm going to do for the overall, the analysis over the 3 years is I can actually do this in a graph and show you totals, because I couldn't do that with number of festivals because each year is just 50, 50, 50. But with revenue totals, you can actually do it like that, and it's much easier to see the trend over the 3 years. And this is what it looks like. So from 2017, you can see there's clear growth into 2018, and it falls off a cliff in 2019, which is very bizarre, as there's no reason to suggest why. So we might have to take a little bit more of a dive into that after the presentation. But one thing we can say from this takeaway is that Texas still managed to grow. So that's quite the anomaly. Now, post-COVID, we can see from 22 to 23 is blue everywhere, except for just a couple of states. But given the scale of the classification, the jump is actually quite huge, because we're seeing some states that are going, 8, 9, 10-fold the revenue in 1 year, which is obviously quite incredible. But then going from 23 to 24, some of that pulls back a bit, particularly in the major states. But then actually, number-wise, it's still on a growth for in terms of how many states are increasing revenue. And if we look over the 3 years, there's the 2022 essentially is the lowest year, and is suffering, I guess, a lot from the rebound of COVID and still people recovering. But then by 23, it's rebounded quite substantially and sustains in 2024. Now for another analysis, which is all the attributes we collected on for pre versus post-COVID in a graph, so we can actually see who performed better. For attendance, pre-COVID was a far better performer than post-COVID, with about 17 million people showing out versus only about 12 million post-COVID. If we're looking at revenue, pre-COVID, still no surprise with those attendance numbers outdid post-COVID, but not by a whole lot. And for ticket price, we're looking at about $20, $23 more in post-COVID. I would love to inspect that, because it does not feel like my tickets that I buy have only gone up by $20 for these type of things over a period of about 4 or 5 years. So yeah, quite interesting. And right on time is actually having a look at these results and see what's going on. What happened in 2019? There's a huge drop off in revenue that seems relatively unknown why. It should be growing along with CPI, and there's been no sort of hazards or epidemics that have thrown anything out, because that came in the start of 2020. If we look at the 2018 to 2019 comparison map, the biggest red ones that typically have a lot of festivals are California, Nevada, and maybe Washington. It's I thought it would include it as well. So it's worth finding out what's going on here because there's a $550 million loss. Did some of these festivals not happen? And if they didn't, why? What's going on here? You may have seen in the news reports and various other things a lot of festivals and other things being cancelled because of increased weather events of late. Some of the ones I've found and I've just seen going around, Bonnaroo has cancelled this year and had to cancel last year as well because of bad weather. Electric Forest, it's just well known that if you're going to Electric Forest, it is going to be awful weather. There was Splendor in the Mud that I went to in 2015. That was absolutely insane and probably should have been called off. And then another one was a Lunar Electric, and that was 43 degrees and bushfire warnings. You might have even seen from a couple of years ago, one that actually got onto the main waves quite a lot was Burning Man having a storm go through, and the nature of that desert being a player. The fine sediment, it was just an absolute nightmare. To be in, and the nature of the festival being there's no shops, there's you bring everything in, caused a lot of people to have to pick up and leave. And this particular festival goer rescued Chris Rock and Diplo that were about 6 miles out of the festival trying to hike out of there. And to make things worse, this year there's also been a huge dust storm that's gone straight through it. So yeah, these festivals that were once you didn't really get this happening a lot are happening much more often now, and it's making a lot of people think whether it's worth the risk of going to these festivals nowadays. Inspecting 2019 and the Western states that had a huge drop off in festivals, used FME to do it by aggregating the festivals by name and then using the number of aggregated features as the number of years that occurred. Then using that in the test filter to find the number of years that didn't equal 3, so it's missing, but then doesn't have 2019 in the concatenated values. Then running that through another test filter just to pull out the ones that have California, WA, or NV in their location, case sensitive, so that it pulls out the state, and then sort that out descending by revenue to get a good idea of the big ones that are missing because they're a bit more important. These are the results that we've gotten, and there are some huge names left off the list, and there are a lot of them as well. So Coachella, EDC, Hard Summer, they're all ones. Burning Man, I picked those out straight away as some pretty big ones that I do not remember seeing in the news as not going ahead. But I mean, there is still 3 things that are possible here, and we should consider them all. Either is that they didn't happen in 2019, or that they did, but they just weren't in the top 50, or AI is lying straight to my face. So we'll get Detective Agent Scully on the case and investigate what's going on. So now it's time to do some high-end elaborate sleuthing, aka Google search for about 10 seconds. And on 2 of the ones that weren't listed, very shortly I find out that it happened over 2 weekends in Coachella. The weekend Beyonce and Eminem indeed headlined, grossing 114 million US. And Beyonce even brought back Destiny's Child and recorded a live album there. And that was the main stage. So yeah, it definitely happened. EDC 2017, that was the lineup. So yeah, lots of people there. Not as many cool facts as Coachella, but absolutely did happen. So some of the predictions that I made, let's assess them. Post-COVID is going to have more variable revenue trends. Don't actually know because 2019 was such an inaccurate year that was pulled. We can't actually tell. Probably if it did pull it correctly, that would have been true, mainly because 2022 was such a low year. But then again, 23 and 24 were very close. So that's a bit of a question mark there. More total revenue for pre-COVID that eventuated. 2022 did have the lowest revenue, and the more revenue and festivals were in the populous cities. And that was correct, as we can see from this total map that we had before. You got California, Texas, Florida, Illinois, Nevada, the sort of states I was alluding to at the start are the ones that have the most revenue. Before we wrap up, just going through some future ideas because we are running out of time. I could definitely make this more spatial and see if things like biomes and geology and vegetation are any determinants for the location of music festivals, sort of linking to the idea of destination setting festivals. I wanted to use ggplots for this one, but just didn't with the R connector to see if there's any function of location on attendance, revenue, and especially genre. But I thought too, I could, if I've reduced the location of the scale, you'd probably get more interesting and more better insights because you get assess a few of the things I've said above, but you could also do weather events, and you'd get a higher range of festivals in attendance that are probably more valuable for things that you're trying to find out. And I could definitely improve the data collection. That's the thing that's been the backbone of this whole presentation. So prompting for template for AI, I could look into. I think that's the biggest thing is finding out what right prompting words do you need for what you're trying to get back. And then also in FME, with the range of AI connectors that have come out in the last 6 months or less, you could actually utilize a lot of those and do a bit of a comparison on the different AI given data sets that you request from them. So maybe a follow-up study could be something like, comparing multiple AI sources to analyze the influence of location on genre for the top 50 festivals in the Eastern USA. Main reason I thought of that is because you've got the South at the bottom and you've got more of a modern urban influence up top. And there's quite a number of different environmental settings across there too. So it might give you some decent results. But apart from that, that is everything. So thanks for coming and having a look, and I'll hand it back to Danielle now for any questions.